Welcome to my next podcast. In this podcast, I want to talk about finding your voice and what actually stops you from speaking, or what actually takes your voice away, and then what brings it back, and what makes your voice so fundamentally important to your existence and to your life. And does silence have a voice? It's such an interesting thing because throughout my life I've ebbed and flowed between having a voice, being strong and powerful in my voice, and being resolute and not caring so much about the ripple effect that my voice is going to make, but truly believing that I have something to say and that my words are worthy of being said because I believe they're worthy of being said. And I suppose what triggered this podcast, and when I say the word trigger, it triggered it because it's a trigger that created action inside me, and triggers are not always bad. Triggers are good. A trigger was, I got a text from one of my clients saying, you need to promote your podcast because you have something to say. And in the beginning of this podcast, I didn't want to promote it because I wasn't ready. The first few podcasts in this Under the Silence were very shy. They were like the intimate and vulnerable parts of myself that was finding her feet. I was finding my feet and getting my courage to do this, and to really, I wanted to do it, but to really find my feet in this becoming something that was worth something or rich for me, which would then transfer to a richness for everybody else. And in that journey, from the beginning of creating this podcast until now, I have really found my voice. And I understand that throughout the month or the time between podcasts, there are times when I have nothing to say, or I'm quiet, or I'm not ready to record. And then there's times in the month where I could just record all day and I could share so much of myself. And I think it's a little bit, I've been connecting a lot with the moon lately, and I think it's a lot to do with the moon, and I have a great belief that the womb is connected to the moon. And at different times in the moon cycle, within my own body and within the moon up there in the sky, creates different times for me to withdraw, and then different times for me to come out and share what I've learnt in that withdrawal. And in that withdrawal process, it's a little bit messy. It's a little bit messy because I haven't quite got the clarity on it. And when I haven't quite got the clarity, I'm going to lose you guys. And yet it's in the messy that we actually learn, but it's also in the clarity. So by giving you the clarity with a little bit of my view on the messy, is easier to digest than me actually delivering in the messy. Because when we deliver in the messy, it's uncomfortable. Because it's uncomfortable enough to be in your own body when you're dealing with the messy. And there can be all different types of messy. And going within doesn't have to be messy either. It just is what it is. And I think that's what being a woman is all about, you know. And there can be some stress in having to show up constantly and be the blossom constantly. I mean, really, if we learn from nature, a flower blossoms and then it drops and it dies and then another blossom will come. And it doesn't happen in the monthly cycle. But the moon does blossom once a month, doesn't it? Yeah. So back to finding my voice. When I have been quiet for months on end, it's really been my beliefs that have stopped me from speaking, or it has been an opinion of another that has overshadowed or overpowered me, another that has triggered a response in me where they've said something or they've done something, sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously, that has made me withdraw. And it's made me feel that what I have to say has no value. Which is really, really interesting. Because when I'm in that place, or for years when I was in that place, it's quite a dark place. And it's quite uncomfortable. And in that place, there's a lot of entangled relationships. And you're usually going to attract entangled relationships where there's not a lot of boundaries and there's not a lot of clarity, and you're going to tend to be in relationships with people where it's going to be just as muddy as you are. So why is it important to be in that mud? Well, I suppose it is important because that's where we learn. But what's most important is that we eventually and finally raise our heads out of that mud and actually start to share and actually start to speak. And it just takes one person. If one person listens to you, then that one person listening to you gives you that value that there's a person who's willing to listen to you. And then when that one person listens to you, they give you the space in order to be heard. And as you're speaking, you can then start to hear yourself. And that one person who's listening to you, when they're coming from a place of no judgment, when they're coming from a place of just being there without trying to fix you and just allowing you to talk, giving you the spaciousness for all of those bottled up feelings and emotions and all those words that haven't been said to just be spoken, then all of a sudden faith starts to build. Faith again in humanity and faith again in the world. Faith that underneath all those layers, you're worthy of speaking and worthy of existence. And your voice is worthy of something. Rather than just a worker or a servant or a maid, but actual worth. From that one person listening to you and feeling like something that you have said has awoken something in them, gives you that value that you're worth more than nothing. And it's really interesting because you need to go on that path before you realize that nothing is the goal. So once one person listens to you, you then get the confidence for another person to listen to you. And then when you have a handful of people who are willing to listen to you or connect with you or befriend you or create space, and you can listen to them, then all of a sudden you have connection. You have a community. And this happens inside your body as much as outside of your body. Yeah? Because when you listen to yourself and you listen to your internal cries or you listen to your words that you're saying, you're making a connection with yourself as well. And if you think about the nervous system in your body, it's like little hands everywhere, isn't it, that are making connections. And if you think about how your brain wires, it's like little hands everywhere. That's our circulatory system, our nervous system. This is how our body embeds and joins together. So we're all about connection. So once your community starts to love and connect with you, your heart starts to open, and the defense or offense that usually clogs up your circulatory system and your blood and your muscles around your heart space, which is where the defense starts around your solar plexus and your arms, starts to let go a little bit. And then your walls start to let go a little bit. And it's not just the road to I'm going to speak now and be worthy. You're going to go in and out and in and out, because frequency works with waves. It works with waves because it's ebbing and flowing. It gives you that feedback constantly, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, so that you continuously find your way. And neither positive or negative is positive or negative in inverted commas in the response. It's merely the chemical reaction or the electric current that is working with the entire universe of sound, color, and vibration of energy. So once you reach the point of understanding that you are worthy and that there's a whole lot of people out there who actually are interested in your words because you've been sitting on them for such a long time and brewing on them, then all of a sudden your appeal and your value and your light starts to increase. Because not only do you feel more accepted outside of yourself, but you feel more accepted inside of yourself as well. And as you accept yourself more on the inside, your cells start to shine and your aura starts to build and you become magnificent or magnifying, because you then become something that people are interested in, because it then allows them to magnify as well. So hand in hand, through humanity and connection, we can make the connections that allow people to find their voice. And when we realize that, we're really all coming from our heart space. And perhaps the coloring of the way that we connect has been conditioned by our experience of our life and our past lives. And we start to have understanding of where that person comes from and realize that it's not personal. We can break down the walls that have been built around the solar plexus and the ego, and break down the walls of defense and offense and the walls of war, and realize that underneath all of that, there's a beautiful heart. And when we speak from the heart, rather than speaking the words of another or speaking from our ego or speaking from defense and offense, people's hearts will open and they will be able to connect with you. It's when we hide our hearts behind the identity or the construct that has been created from the path that we've walked in our life that we're going to get miscommunication. It's when we colour the people in front of us and paint them with the same brush as people that have hurt us in the past. And we don't realise that through conscious awareness and consciousness, we never have the same situation happen again and again and again. We just think it's the same situation because our wiring in our body gives us that sensory experience that it's the same situation. And then our brain reaffirms and labels it as the same situation, and then we believe it to be true. But if we open our minds and realize that the situation is actually different, we're creating new neural pathways in our brain. And we're allowing our body to become more consciously aware, and we're advancing ourselves as a human being. And it creates more bliss and harmony in our bodies and our connection to ourselves and the universe. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your feedback. And your feedback is listening. Until then, enjoy your day.